The Third Reich is overgrown with a huge number of myths and legends and conspiracy theories. Often in games, movies, and books, the Nazis are portrayed as devils, fans of UFO builders and collectors of ancient magical artifacts. Indeed, we know for a fact that the Nazis were very fond of mysticism and all things mysterious. They used occult ideas in the creation of their horrible ideology. Today, let's try to figure out what was true and what was a myth. Here are 10 interesting facts about the occult, sects, and mysticism in the Third Reich. An account of mysticism in the Third Reich. It is worth starting with the ideas of racism and anti-Semitism on which Nazism was based, which in the Third Reich was the state ideology. This all came about long before Hitler, and he by no means invented it all by himself from scratch. In the mid-19th and early 20th century, certain thinkers began to promote their ideas that there was a superior race and inferior races in the world. Such tiers were not only in Germany, but also, for example, in Great Britain and France. History knows of at least several dozen such figures of thought. In those days, such theories were fashionable. Many people were fond of them, and many people wrote on the subject. It can be compared to the way many people now believe in various conspiracy theories about chipping, vaccinations, a flat Earth, and the fact that people never flew into space and all that. So the ideas of the supporters of racial supremacy differed in detail. But the basic tenet was that there is a special, superior race of people, the Aryans. The ancestral home of the Aryans is Northern Europe, and the peoples living there now are the closest to the original ancient Aryans people, that is, the Germans, the Dutch, the Scandinavians, the French, the English, and so on. And those who live in the south are those who have mixed their blood with other races, thereby contaminating it. The creators of such racial theories argued that the Aryans were a master race, intellectually, physically, and morally superior to other races. And the Aryans, according to them, should rule and control the supposedly inferior races. The Aryan race is opposed to the Semitic race to which the Jews belong. According to the beliefs of Aryan supremacists, Jews see their goal as mixing their blood with Aryan blood in order to defile, contaminate, and harm Aryan blood, and to prevent this, proponents of racial theories have called for various options to combat the Jews, ranging from less brutal methods to quite radical ones. Some called for Aryans to intermarry only with other Aryans, while others called for the extermination or at least sterilization of Semites so that they could not reproduce. It is also interesting that some of these racist thinkers did not connect any mysticism to their theories. They tried somehow to operate with science, though without much success, and other racist thinkers made real fiction out of their theories. Popular was the theory that the Aryans were the descendants of the ancient Atlanteans, that is, the inhabitants of the legendary Atlantis, according to the legends. It was an island where there was an ancient, very highly developed civilization, but then it was destroyed by natural disasters. And here the Aryans were allegedly the descendants of the Atlanteans, but their strength and development was lost because of the insidious Jews who, with their evil plots, destroyed all the former greatness of the Atlanteans. Such anti-Semitic theories were popular in many European countries. There were many people who shared such beliefs. For to believe that your stature is by birthright superior to others is a very attractive idea to some people. Adolf Hitler, upon coming to power, used these theories to create an image of the external enemy, the Jews, and to rally people around him. Racism became an integral part of Nazi ideology. The interest in ideas of racial superiority was the basis for the active formation of interest groups and clubs. One such society was the Thule Society, which emerged in Germany about 15 years before Hitler came to power. Its members were fond of mysticism and believed that the ancestors of the Aryans came from a distant country in the north. This country was called Thule, and perhaps it was also Atlantis. The members of the society painfully interpreted various ancient documents and used them as confirmation of the reality of this legend. They believed that with the help of mystical secret rituals, it was possible to obtain the knowledge of the ancient Aryans and use it for military purposes, among other things. This society was quite numerous. It published magazines and pamphlets, and it consisted of people who would become Hitler's closest associates in the future. For example, his closest aide Rudolf Hess, Hans Frank, one of the organizers of the Holocaust, Dietrich Eckart, and others, Hitler himself was not a member there, but this society played a great role as an incubator of anti-Semitic ideas about the superiority of Germans over others. Members of the society met for lectures and speeches, preaching their ideas to the masses. People of like mind gathered there, and they played a major role in the creation of the National Socialist Party. That is, the Nazi portfolio, which was led by Hitler, that is, into big politics, came people who were into mysticism and magic. Many myths and conspiracy theories formed around the Thule Society after the war. There are many pseudo-documentaries on YouTube that the Thule Society has allegedly been involved in the creation of weapons using the technology of ancient civilizations or even aliens. However, of course, there is no proof of this. And these are just myths. Already after Hitler came to power, a serious organization with state funding was created. It was called Anonerba, which translates as ancestral heritage, and its main task was to engage in activities aimed at proving the correctness of the ideas of racial superiority. The organization employed real scientists from various fields of science, but there were also various mystics, mediums, and representatives of pseudo-scientific disciplines. All of them were engaged in occult ideological support of the Reich. Not only were they engaged in research, but they also conducted a kind of training for the soldiers. During these trainings, they brainwashed the soldiers, explaining that the destruction of inferior races would be a vegetable garden business and that doing it, no pity or remorse should be felt. Among those who were brainwashed were the concentration camp guards. They were lectured by members of the Anonerba and given slim, seemingly logical theories about why the Jews had to be treated this way and not that way. These theories were positioned as scientific, although in reality it was just like science. But science it was not. One could even say that the Anonerba was engaged in creating a new religion for the inhabitants of the Third Reich. A religion that would be based on ancient Germanic myths, anti-Semitism, and the idea of racial superiority with its mystical rituals, philosophy, and symbols. Members of the Anonerba trained soldiers with rune reading as well as German folklore, as the SS had to be as ideologically processed and reliable as possible. Anonerba conducted numerous excavations in Germany and in occupied countries. They searched for secret knowledge in the texts of various archives with ancient documents and organized large expeditions abroad in order to find information about ancient, highly evolved ancestors there. The actual leader of the Anonerba was Heinrich Himmler. He was, in fact, the second man in Germany after Hitler. That is, he was a very influential Nazi. He was very fond of all things mystical and was constantly pushing his ideas to Hitler, some of which Hitler accepted and some of which he denied as complete nonsense. For example, the legends about Atlantis. Also, Himmler believed he was the reincarnation of the German king Heinrich Titzeloff, who lived thousands of years ago. Himmler collected various occult and pseudo-scientific ideas, and with the help of Anonerba tried to solve their mystery, like study them. For example, he suggested that the surface of the Earth was pierced by certain energy lines, meridians through which energy flowed, and at the intersection of these lines on the Earth were formed places of power. That is where cities and military bases should be built. Workers of Anonerba, among others, tried to find these intersections and understand how they work. Another thing Anonerba was engaged in was looting various historical artifacts and antiquities from museums and temples in Nazi-occupied countries. Many of these artifacts were lost forever. The NRB also engaged in various scientific experiments with human bodies, both living and dead. The Nazis sought to justify their ideas scientifically. For this, they needed data from various measurements, including measurements of the parameters of human bodies, the size of their eyes, ears, lips, the relationship of these sizes to each other, and so on. For this purpose, the NRB researchers were supplied with dead bodies from the death camps. The examination of the dead bodies was supervised by August Hirt. He took the bodies apart, pulled out the bones and cut off the heads, then poured alcohol over them and stored them as specimens and exhibits. Experiments were also conducted on living human beings. The experiments were terrible and inhumane. For example, people, these were the same concentration camp prisoners, were kept naked in the cold to study how quickly they would die, which limbs began to die off first, and so on. The Nazis did not consider these test subjects to be human beings because they believed in their racial theories, so they had no pity for the test subjects, but did more traditional research, such as Van Ein fish. The Society also funded the first German expedition to Tibet. This was before the war. in 1933. The expedition included not only obscurantists and mystics, but also real scientists. Although the main goal was still the search for the legacy of the Aryan ancestors, Himmler was very keen on Eastern mysticism, and he speculated that Tibet contained the entrance to the ancient country of Shambhala, where representatives of a highly developed civilization, possessing secret knowledge and possibly magic, lived. What is interesting is that the Nazis considered the Tibetans to be their closest relatives, that is, pure-blooded Aryans as well. This is despite the fact that the average German is very different in appearance from a Tibetan. During the expedition, they measured lip fullness, ears, and skull shape in Tibetans, trying to find external features that could confirm the theory of the superiority of the Aryan Nordic race over the others. The Germans also conducted archaeological excavations in search of artifacts that could confirm their ideology. Various pseudo-scientific theories about the origin and structure of the Earth were popular at the time, such as the theory of the hollow Earth, according to which our planet is hollow inside. The members of the Anonerba believed this to be true and therefore tried to conduct experiments and engage in various scientific investigations. There was also speculation about the existence of other radiation in the depths of the Earth, which, once curbed, could be used as a weapon. Hitler's closest associate, Rudolf Hess, believed this so much that he slept on a pillow with magnets, thinking it could protect him in case Germany's enemies found a way to control this radiation and tried to kill him. A great role in the Third Reich was played by the runes. The Nazis associated them with ancestral knowledge and therefore believed in their special symbolic power. For example, there was such a special military unit in Germany that I spoke to a little earlier. They were something like an elite unit of the army, reporting personally to Hitler and Himmler. The SS guarded the Führer, staged punitive operations in captured lands, guarded concentration camps. In general, they did what required a very strong ideological allegiance to Nazism and the Führer personally. So their symbol is two runes of language in the form of two lightning bolts. These runes symbolize death, victory, and are also an attribute of the Scandinavian god Thor, who could throw lightning bolts. The Nazis also had another rune symbol, the swastika. This symbol is known to everyone. It has existed since ancient times in many different cultures, and it means sun, life, prosperity, and in general, goodness. For example, if you go to Tibet or India, you will see the swastika there. Very often, although this does not mean that everyone there is a Hitler fan. Hitler described the meaning of the Nazi flag in his book, My Struggle, as follows. The red light in the banner means the social idea of this movement. The white circle in the center means the idea of nationalism, the symbol of the white race. And the swastika in the center means the continuous struggle for the domination of the Aryan race. The swastika symbol, as well as the SS symbol in the form of runes, are banned from public display in many countries. Another Nazi mystical symbol was the black sun, also an ancient symbol from Nordic mythology. According to him, the black sun is a celestial body whose light cannot be seen with the eyes. However, his light can be seen if you pump your psychic abilities with meditation and occult practices. There is an ancient castle in Germany called the Wewelsburg. So, in Nazi times, this castle was a training center for officers. And in the same castle was Tabionet Denver, where he spent a lot of time. There is still a hall in the castle called the Obergruppenführer Halls. In the very center of this hall, the symbol of the black sun is depicted on the floor. Esoteric-minded, high-ranking Nazis, with Himmler in mind, gathered in this hall for meditation and rituals. They believed that one day the Aryan race would regain its lost psychic powers, and the black sun would give its energy in the form of power to the Aryans to dominate the Earth. Nowadays, the black sun symbol is very popular among modern neo-Nazis and pagans. Speaking of occultism in the Third Reich, one cannot help but talk about the situation of traditional religions. After all, the essence is the same: belief in the otherworldly. And about Hitler's normal and religious views, this is still a subject of great debate among historians. There is even a whole article on Wikipedia about whether Hitler believed or did not believe. Hitler's mother was a very religious Catholic, and his father was the opposite, a skeptic and atheist in his speeches. In his writings, Hitler repeatedly referred to himself as a Catholic and claimed that Nazi ideology was very Christian, and that Christian values and God were above all things to Nazis. At the same time, he repeatedly criticized Christianity and argued about its corrupting influence on people. Also, the Nazi Party did a lot to weaken the position of religious organizations. The Protestant and Catholic churches, for example, had their oxygen cut off, while Jehovah's Witnesses and other Christian sects were destroyed. Hitler knew what his comrades in arms were doing to religious figures, and, at the very least, did not interfere with them. Most historians agree that Hitler was not really a religious man, but in his speeches he claimed to be religious because it benefited him. After all, there were a lot of religious people in Germany at the time, and he could not afford to spoil relations with them and lose their support. Because of his criticism of their religion, he even met with many religious people, and all of them, as one, said that they were sure that Hitler was a very religious man. They did not understand that supposedly from communicating with him, it is more likely that he was just deftly deceiving them. After all, he knew how to manipulate people and charm them with his charisma. That said, Hitler was not an atheist. It is more likely that he believed there was something out there, but he didn't adhere to any particular religion, and this belief in something being out there had a strong influence on him. You know, I think a lot of people have friends like that who consider themselves believers, but they practice some mix of different religions, esoteric practices, occult traditions, and superstitions. Such a person can take something from Orthodoxy, something from Hinduism, something from Buddhism, and something from spirituality publishers on social media, where they write about energies, the law of attraction, and the power of visualization. Usually, such a person just takes from everywhere what he likes, without any structure, just because he likes to believe in it. At the same time, such a person, despite the nuclear mix of what he believes, may call himself orthodox, for example, even though orthodoxy rejects 90% of what he believes and does. Adolf Hitler was probably the same kind of person. He probably could not make up his mind until the very end of his life as to what he believed or did not believe. The Nazis, led by Hitler, understood that even if they wanted to, they could not do away with Christianity. So they decided to modify Christianity by creating a special Aryan Christianity. Special structures were set up to rewrite the Bible. Their task was to create an implementation of this book. That is, they had to remove everything from it that said anything about the special role of the Jews for Christianity. There was a whole institute that crossed out or modified the unwanted clauses of the Bible according to the Nazi version of the Holy Scripture. The Nazi version claimed that Jesus was not a Jew, and that his teachings were specifically perverted later by the Apostle Paul, who was a Jew. The new edition of the Nazi Bible stated that important points to Christianity, such as love of neighbor and humility, were in fact introduced in order to make Christians weak, so that they could be easily controlled. The concept that Jesus Christ was a martyr was also changed. In the Nazi version, he was a ruthless hero. Also in the Nazi-edited Bible, there were 12 commandments instead of 10. 2 additional commandments read as follows: keep your blood pure and honor your teacher and leader. They sought to keep only a modified New Testament from the Bible while completely banning the Old Testament because it only spoke of the Jews and their God. Speaking of Hitler, on the screen now you see a picture that Hitler drew. It shows Jesus Christ and his mother Mary. You all know that Hitler was an artist, and he painted this picture in 1913 in his youth. The picture, in my opinion, is very light and joyful. Astrology played a special role in the Reich. From the diaries of Hitler as well as other high-ranking Nazis, we know that they took astrological predictions very seriously and constantly consulted their astrologers. Hitler even relied on the advice of astrologers during the planning of military operations. Hitler had a close associate, Rudolf Hess, who was even more steeped in mysticism than Hitler himself. So Hess, despite the fact that he was Hitler's closest ally, did a very unusual thing in 1941. In 41st year, Germany was already at war with Great Britain, and so, without a second thought, he decided that he had to make peace with that country on behalf of Germany and unite with Great Britain against the Soviet Union. To do this, Hess had to fly there personally. He knew how to fly himself, so under the cover of night, he boarded the plane and flew to Great Britain, where he was immediately arrested and eventually imprisoned for life. Negotiations were unsuccessful. Now Hess planned his flight with the help of his astrologer. He chose this date and this time because the location of the planets guaranteed him success. But it did not happen. The planets were wrong. What is interesting is that after this act of Hess, Hitler was understandably furious. So he ordered the arrest of all astrologers in Germany who were publicly doing this. The persecution of this profession began in earnest. It is worth adding that Hitler did not let his astrologers offend him and continued to consult with them almost until the end of the war. Astrological predictions were also used for propaganda purposes. Favorable predictions were given to German soldiers before an important battle to raise their morale. And conversely, flyers with poor astrological predictions were distributed to enemy soldiers to undermine their morale. After Hitler's death and the complete defeat of Nazi Germany, the Führer still had a huge number of admirers. Everyone knows about the Nazis, who in the modern world also share the ideas of racial superiority. But there is also such a thing as esoteric Hitlerism. In simple terms, it is a kind of mystical and religious sectarian notion that Hitler was in fact not just a dictator, but a missionary, a holy man, or even the incarnation of God. The first preachers of esoteric Hitlerism were a woman named Sami 3D Lee. She was a Greek, a French writer, fond of yoga, Indian esoteric and spiritual practices, and supported the Nazis during World War II. She had just been in India and was spreading the ideas of Nazism there, collaborating with local Nazi organizations. After the war, she returned to Europe, traveled to war-torn sides, and dressed in Indian traditional sari clothing, wearing swastika earrings, told people that Hitler was an incarnation of the Indian god Vishnu, who came to Earth to end the era of dark times and to complete the work that the Führer had begun. It is necessary to keep and further spread Nazi ideas. She also wrote a book outlining her creed. Another admirer of Hitler was the former Chilean diplomat Miguel Serrano. He created a doctrine according to which there was an ancient conspiracy. Allegedly, the legendary Library of Alexandria was created to conceal documents about the existence of Hyperborea, an ancient country inhabited by Aryans with magical powers. They came to Earth from other galaxies, but then began to mix with the primitive population of Earth. Because of this, there was a catastrophe and Hyperborea was destroyed. The Aryans lost their magical abilities. Hitler, according to Serrano's teachings, is the incarnation of the Indian god Vishnu, who came to Earth to unite the Aryans and purify their blood by returning the magical power to purify their blood. According to Serrano's teachings, one should only marry other Aryans and practice numerous magical rituals, meditation, and Kundalini yoga. Hitler, according to Serrano, was not defeated in the war, but simply passed into another dimension where he now resides. Having fulfilled his mission on Earth, he gave people a teaching to follow. Followers of esoteric Hitlerism do exist, but their number is small, mainly among neo-Nazis. Nevertheless, there are still people who believe in it, and this is sad. Speaking of all the mystical stuff associated with the Third Reich and the Nazis, one can't help but mention the vast number of conspiracy theories that have proliferated since the war. I love conspiracy theories, and I hope you love them too, but I also hope you don't believe in them. Everyone take them with humor. So, it's a very common theory that Hitler didn't actually kill himself, but that it was his double that he had. By the way, he actually did, like many other dictators. Hitler himself allegedly fled after the war, not just anywhere, but to Antarctica. According to conspiracy, the Nazis managed to find the entrance to the underground voids. Remember, I talked about the theory of the hollow Earth, and built a military base in Antarctica in these voids, where they continue to live to this day. Deep underground, the Third or maybe even the Fourth Reich is thriving and growing, and Hitler was taken there after the war ended by submarines. Also, conspiracy theorists are very fond of the theme that UFOs, especially saucer-shaped ones, are actually ships that were built by Nazis living underground. It is well known that the Nazis did experiment with flying machines, disc-shaped forms, but they didn't succeed. Conspirologists, on the other hand, claim the opposite. Even after the war, numerous alleged eyewitness accounts of a certain secret virile society that existed in Nazi Germany began to appear. According to this myth, the Nazis got their hands on secret knowledge of a highly advanced civilization living underground, which had, among other things, disc-shaped flying machines. And the fuel for these machines was some mysterious force called virile. This is some kind of infinite energy, by mastering which it is possible to create a variety of different high-tech devices. So, according to esoteric and pseudo-historical books, which began to be mass-produced after the war in Nazi Germany, there was a virile society in which scientists like Van Naarp worked, as well as female mediums who came into contact with representatives of the underground civilization and adopted from them the secrets of working with energy. In reality, such a society of Verils did not exist. This is just the fiction of esotericists and conspiracy theorists. There are also many myths that Hitler allegedly tried to find the Holy Grail. That is the cup from which Jesus Christ drank wine at his last meeting with the apostles. This cup was sought by many in ancient times because they believed in its magical power. Another artifact that Hitler allegedly really wanted to own was the Spear of Doom that a Roman soldier struck the crucified Jesus Christ in the side with to finish him off. There are several artifacts preserved around the world in museums and temples, and in each case the owners of the spear claim that their spear is the Campione, but hardly any of them are actually authentic. According to many legends, Hitler passionately wished to own the Spear of Destiny, the very one that was in the Habsburg Museum in Vienna, and was a symbol of imperial power. However, there is no documentary evidence of such aspirations of Hitler either. Such information is contained exclusively in conspiracy and mystical books. Do you believe in any conspiracy theories? If so, please tell me which ones. I read all the comments, and they also help a lot to promote videos, so write at least something. Subscribe to the channel and be sure to click on the bell.